Chapter 1. Ignoring the Rejection Rocket. Make rejection your ally instead of your enemy. Network marketing is one of the most fun and rewarding businesses in the world, but eventually all network marketers are faced with certain widespread and universal challenges. No matter how long we participate in multi-level marketing, MLM, and no matter how successful we become, there is always the possibility that we will be shot down temporarily by the most prevalent and dangerous weapon of all, the rejection rocket. It can and will strike any time, rendering us virtually immobile, thus destroying our enthusiasm and excitement, which are the essential qualities for success. Rejection by your spouse. Everyone faces rejection in life, but what makes our form of rejection so very devastating is that it often comes from the very people we most love and respect. Our spouse, our parents, our best friends, and business associates. We are convinced that rejection causes more people to fail in MLM than any other factor, and often they fail literally before they ever begin, because their approach is from the head, not the heart. Here's the classic scenario. Bob is at a transitional place in his life and open to a career change. He is receptive to listening to a new business concept. He goes to a network marketing meeting, and for the first time, everything makes sense. He may have considered working in this industry 4 or 5 times before, but he was never in a change mode during previous presentations. Now, because he's about to be laid off, he has a transitional mindset. So not only does Bob begin to see the wisdom in networking, but he actually finds himself enthusiastic about the earnings potential. Throughout the second half of the 1-hour presentation, he begins to make a mental list of the friends and associates whom he knows would be excellent at recruiting. Now, let's look at 2 possible outcomes. Regardless of whether Bob actually signs up or not, he's about to be attacked by the first adversary in this business. And unless the person conducting the presentation prepares Bob and the others for what is going to occur by presenting certain facts at the end of the first recruiting interview, Bob is going to quit before he ever begins. Later, we'll return to the particular details of this story, but first let's see what happens to Bob once he leaves the presentation. In fact, we'll examine several scenarios. Because the timing is right in his life, Bob is excited. And because Bob knows several people who will be naturals at recruiting, he can hardly wait to break the news to them that he has found the ultimate opportunity. If the person who introduced Bob to MLM is one of those folks who signs people up at the first interview, Bob may actually fill out a distributor agreement, promising to come back on Saturday for training. More than likely, he won't be asked to sign up at the first meeting, but will instead promise to think about the business and call the presenter back with his answer. However, unless the recruiter carefully prepares Bob for rejection, Bob is now set up for failure. He's excited, though he may not have admitted that to anyone yet. But Bob is about to be blindsided by the rejection rocket, an inevitability seldom explained properly by most recruiters. Because he hasn't been trained, here's what happens. First, Bob corners his wife. He's really excited, and the conversation goes something like this. "Honey, our worries may be over. I think Phil has given us a gift from God. You remember how I explained the cutbacks at my company, and how I told you I could actually be one of the future fatalities?" "Yeah, Bob, but you don't really think after all these years that you could get laid off? I mean, you weren't serious, were you?" His wife finds this inconceivable. "Honey, listen, it doesn't matter. I was just over at Phil's, and he and Nancy have gotten into a new business that looks really great. I can't believe how much money there is to be earned and freedom to be gained. Honey, Phil is about to get his first big check. And I brought home some samples of the products. Nancy is blown away by this cream and shampoo. Here, I brought some home for you to try. She wants you to call her." The rejection rocket is aimed directly at Bob's head and is about to be launched. Bob's wife takes the 2 packets of moisturizer and shampoo from him, looks at them, then at him incredulously. "Wait a minute, Bob. You're serious, aren't you? Let me get this straight. You've been with your company for 7 years. We have a company car, health insurance, and we just bought our dream home. Your boss loves you like his own son and is about to recommend you to the Golden Acres Country Club. They lay off a few lousy executives, and now you're seriously thinking about giving up a legitimate career, and all those years I suffered to put you through your MBA program to do some pyramid scheme. Please, Bob, tell me this is a bad dream. Tell me I'm not hearing you say this." Bob grins and reaches out to touch his wife's arm, and she jerks it away, snarling like a cornered wharf rat. He hasn't seen that look on her face since he accidentally backed over the puppy last summer. "No, honey, you aren't listening. We've got a chance here to get in early. We can be earning over $20,000 a month in a year. Do you realize how many hours I've been working? The baby cries when I pick her up because I'm virtually a stranger. They've laid off 35 men and women this quarter, and I could be next. Honey, look, I'm telling you, Phil and Nancy are our friends. They aren't—" "Oh, come on, Bob," interrupts his wife. "You yourself have said that Phil is irresponsible. He failed at that tire company. He failed at life insurance. Then he tried that stupid greeting card deal, and we both laughed at how dumb that was. Bob, you're not thinking straight." She softens and launches a new tactic. "Bob, honey, we're set. You said so yourself. And besides, what am I going to tell my parents? That you left your company to sell shampoo door to door?" Bob has just heard the same spousal arguments that countless other men and women have heard over the years. It could easily have been Bob leveling the same objections at his wife, who just returned from her first serious network marketing presentation. Often it's the wife who is bombarded by personal affronts from her husband. Had Bob simply said nothing until he could get his wife to Phil and Nancy's for a legitimate presentation, the rejection rocket would have never been launched. Or, had the approach been emotionally positive instead of intellectually negative, the outcome might have been different. But keep in mind that even if the circumstances differ, the outcome is often the same. This discussion could have happened on a Sunday morning following a Saturday training session in which Bob had already signed a distributor application. It doesn't really matter. The point is this. We are convinced that as many as 50% of all potentially successful networkers fail before ever getting started because their sponsor does not prepare them for the spouse rejection rocket. The tragedy is that those very circumstances could quite easily be minimized, if not completely eliminated, through preparation and proactive measures. It's the responsibility of every recruiter to fully prepare prospects for rejection, then provide them with the tools to overcome rejection. Phil should have insisted that Bob bring his wife to a full-blown presentation, either at this first briefing or at another one soon to follow. In addition, he should have said emphatically, "Bob, don't try to explain this to your wife until you have more information. Or better yet, bring her to us." Rejection by family and friends. Before presenting solutions to the previous problem, let's first scrutinize another scenario that occurs frequently. Although the participants are somewhat different, the outcome is equally predictable and negative. We begin by assuming that Bob's wife is as excited as he is about this network marketing opportunity. Let's also assume that Bob has signed up, and both he and his wife have been trained and prepared for any and all rejection. Initially, Bob decides to take the lead until their new infant is a little older. His wife will join Bob later. Bob can anticipate the primary objections used by prospective MLMers and has memorized a response for each one. In fact, he's quite proud of his knowledge, and is even perhaps a little cocky about his ability to overcome objections. Bob is excited about his new skills of persuasion, believing with a smug self-confidence that he can effectively counter each objection. He's convinced that in this battle of wits, his prospects are unarmed. He fully expects to win any and all debates about network marketing, and prove to each of his friends that his new venture is far superior to traditional business. Equipped with that knowledge, he picks up the telephone and begins calling his 25 best prospects, those people whom he would love to spend the rest of his life with in a partnership. Usually one of three outcomes is predictable, so let's evaluate all three. Winning the battle. The first outcome is what we call winning the battle. Bob has just gotten past his close friend's secretary and is beginning his prospecting conversation. This is a man Bob has known since high school. Their lives are quite different now, so they see each other infrequently, but have nevertheless retained their warm friendship. The conversation begins with small talk, but let's move ahead to the actual dialogue about the business. Bob begins his approach. You know, Steve, the other reason I called is to try to set up a convenient time when you and Sally can come over and take a look at a new business my wife and I have. Steve cuts in. Bob, it sounds like one of those pyramid deals to me. Don't tell me you and Christy have been sucked into one of those scams. Of course, Bob has been trained, albeit improperly, to handle objections, and he's armed for battle. Actually, Steve, I can understand your reluctance to look at a deal like this, but all I ask is that you remain open-minded for a 45-minute presentation. Let me ask you, Steve, would Tuesday or Thursday be better for you? Bob is proud of his canned response, but as we'll see, his pride is very fleeting. Come on, Bob. You and I go way back. You can cut out the memorized speeches and shoot me straight. Sal and I aren't the least bit interested in one of those deals. In fact, my own father got sucked into some gold scam last summer and put over $5,000 into the deal, never signed up one person, and has a garage full of overpriced gold coins gathering dust, Steve says gently but firmly. At this point, or really before the conversation had even gone this far, Bob should have realized that Steve isn't in the right time in his life to see this opportunity. He isn't the slightest bit open to the business, and anything said from here on will only further alienate Steve, and therefore hurt Bob's chances to approach his friend at a later date when he may be more receptive. In fact, unbeknown to Bob, he may actually do irreparable damage to their friendship by continuing to pursue the matter. There's a specific 6-month rule we'll present later in the book that will help you avoid Bob's dilemma. But for now, let's assume Bob is unaware of it. Unfortunately, Bob is relentless. He knows he's in a great business and believes that if he can respond properly to each objection, he can perhaps sign up Steve and his wife. Because Steve is a professional who knows many quality people, Bob is absolutely convinced that, of all his friends, Steve has the greatest potential. Bob believes that all he has to do is skillfully overcome his friend's objections, and he's got a winner on his front line. He's sure he will win the battle. But it won't happen, and the reasons it won't happen are simple. Steve is not in the right time in his life for change, and Bob approached his friend improperly. In this particular scenario, the objections and responses to them will probably continue for another 5 or 10 minutes. In a last-ditch effort to shut Bob up, Steve may actually agree to go to a presentation. Of course, the chances that he will actually attend are slim to none. In this winning-the-battle scenario, more than likely Bob's prospect will be a no-show, and in the long run, he will even lose the war. Unable to apply the 6-month rule, the battle will never again be waged, let alone won. In other words, another potentially great network marketer is history. And you can bet Steve will tell 10 other friends at a future cocktail party just how bizarre and frenzied their former friend Bob has become. Kiss 10 more possible networkers goodbye. Positive negative. The second outcome is what we call the positive negative. In this scenario, the very instant Bob mentions his intentions, Steve jumps in and aggressively points out how much he hates business deals with friends, detests MLM or any other home business pyramid, and adds, "By God, it better never surface again in the course of our friendship." Of course, Bob shuts up immediately and changes the subject back to small talk. He feels rejected because his good friend is so positive that network distribution is a rotten industry. And because Steve is so positively negative about network marketing, Bob decides to never again extend the opportunity to his friend. That is a serious mistake, as we'll explain later when we fully define the 6-month rule. The good old boy. The third outcome is what we call the good old boy. An example of this scenario is as follows. You know, Steve, the other reason I called is because my wife and I have become involved in a business that we want to share with you. It will take about an hour at the most, and we can see you on Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock or Thursday at 7:30. Which is better for you? Steve answers pleasantly, "Gosh, Robert, it sounds great. Can you tell me just a little about it?" Well, Steve, I'd rather not discuss it over the telephone, because it's about 90% visual. I'd like for you and Sally to see a brief video, then actually sample some products and take home some literature to examine. But I can tell you that this company is expanding globally, and they're looking for brand new recruiters and trainers who have always wanted to earn over $25,000 a month. "My God, Bob," Steve excitedly responds. $25,000 a month? Phew, I can tell you right now we are always open-minded to new opportunities, especially when there's that kind of earnings potential. I think Thursday would be our best bet. What time? This last scenario is actually somewhat common when new distributors are calling friends. In MLM, we refer to friends as one's warm market, because most family members and close friends do not want to reject you. They will often agree to things they don't want, just to be warm, hence the terminology. But we can assure you that often as many as half of all warm market appointments, and by that we mean friends, family, and associates, who commit to coming to your home for a private business presentation, will not show up. And that can be more devastating than any other form of rejection because you'll feel deceived. So remember, no matter how nice they are on the telephone, half of your family and friends may not show up for your meetings, especially if you tell them about products and brochures, videos and samples. Knowing this fact ahead of time softens the pain. Simply put, all people detest rejection, especially rejection by friends and family. Frank Pinelli of West Lynn, Oregon, had been in the business all of 1 week when he experienced one of the worst rejections of his life. As he explains, "I couldn't wait to meet for breakfast with a man whom I had come to respect and admire. Like me, he was a realtor, and a very successful one. Both of us were in the process of leaving real estate to start our own businesses, and I assumed that would give us grounds for being mutually supportive of each other. As I began to describe my networking business to him, without a moment's hesitation, he told me that even if he was a panhandler on the street, pushing a cart around, the last thing in the world he would ever do is network marketing. I grew numb. My world, for the moment, was destroyed. A respected friend had, in so many words, called me worse than a bum living on the streets. 2 years have passed, and today I truly owe my ex-friend a debt of gratitude. He so enraged me that I vowed to become hugely successful, just to show him how wrong he was. His having treated me like such a jerk is to this day a significant part of what drives me. Today, Frank, together with his wife Joanne, earns about $5,000 per month. But rather than homeless or, even worse, 70-hour-a-week realtors like their ex-friend, they are both stay-at-home parents to 2 young children and, in their words, job share the business around them. Friends are often our biggest dream stealers, and once a dream is stolen, it is not easily recovered. But Frank and Joanne turned what could have been a stolen dream into a burning desire to rise to their full potential. Today they both love what they do and have their sights set on making it all the way to the top. And when they reach the very pinnacle, it will undeniably be because one business associate tried to smash their hopes and dreams. Perhaps once they make it to the very top, their realtor friend will decide to join them in business. Dennis Clifton, who, together with his brother David, built our strongest global organization, remembers how excited he was about his future when he first signed up back in May of 1986, before any of us knew what we were doing. As I began to go down my list, I quickly realized that this wasn't going to be as easy as I had hoped. Almost every person that I called was unwilling to even meet with me. But in spite of this, my positive attitude was holding up, until one morning. I had a friend who worked as a disc jockey at a local radio station. I called him at work and began to explain what I was doing. His response was something I had never experienced before. He actually began to laugh out loud. Now, I don't mean a whimsical smile or friendly chuckle. I mean a wall-rattling, spirit-crushing belly laugh. I was devastated as I hung up the phone. I had never been laughed at quite like that before. Then all the voices began to come to me. Why in the world am I doing this? Nothing is worth this kind of humiliation. Since nobody seems to want to do this, maybe they know something I don't. If I quit now, I'll never have to go through that again. I can remember slipping into that black hole that so many new distributors never come out of. When my phone rang, it was my sponsor, Mark Yarnell. He asked, "Hey, big boy, what's happening?" I responded, "Mark, you're not going to believe this, but I just got laughed at, big time." Then I told him everything that happened, and guess what he did? He started to laugh uncontrollably. After a few minutes, when he regained his composure, he said, "Dennis, don't let yourself worry about that goober. Just send him a copy of your check in 6 months." What a great response. For the first time in my life, I understood the full meaning of the old saying, "He who laughs last laughs best." Today, more than a decade later, that man who almost laughed me out of the business is still a disc jockey in Austin, Texas. Me? I live in the mountains in Colorado with my wife and kids and run an international business with distributors in over 20 countries around the world. I've made millions of dollars since that first laugh, and I can assure you it was worth it. Let 'em laugh. Maria Perkins of Santa Barbara has been with her company for 8 years and has made it to the 3rd level of her compensation plan. She sees her role in network marketing as a conduit or bridge for people like herself who cringe at the thought of sales, and recommends that her associates approach the business like professional consultants. In order to sustain herself through these years, she plays her own mental imagery tape in her mind. No matter if it was my 40-year-old baby brother smirking at my efforts, the people who swore they would show up and didn't, or even the friends who suddenly viewed me as some ex-con about to bamboozle them into my newest scam. They all led me to the mountaintop, and it is here I shall remain. Maria is convinced that we all have to operate on our own agenda, not someone else's. May you be as fortunate as Frank, Dennis, and Maria when you have one of your friends put you down or scoff at you. Later we will discuss the very finest friend approach in order to minimize the rejection like these distributors faced. But we hope that learning of their battles with rejection will assist you in coping with your own. Fine wine can be a byproduct of sour grapes. Turn your battles into a motivational force and let that force propel you through those early rejections. Dennis is right. It is all worth it. Preparing your prospects for rejection. The rejection rocket can be leveled at you any time in your career, and the problem is that you generally don't see it coming. It's a stealth weapon. It can take many different forms and is frequently unrecognizable right up until impact, and then kaboom! While we certainly cannot help you anticipate every potential kind of rejection, we can definitely prepare you for those forms of rejection which are the most destructive. Avoidance of these dangerous weapons is fairly simple if you begin programming your networking professionals at the very beginning, literally during the close of the first recruiting meeting. Let's set the stage. You have just presented your business opportunity effectively by following a specific format. One we'll explain in a later chapter. And you're convinced that 3 of the 5 prospects sitting in your living room are tremendously excited about the income potential. They've asked all the right questions, and you've answered them to the best of your ability. You've played the video, very clearly and simply explained the numbers during your board presentation, handed them some samples, and finally explained that training is here at your home next Saturday at 10 o'clock a.m. You're ready for the closing comments. Comments specifically calculated to call their attention to rejection and assist them in avoiding it before they are sideswiped. We are irrevocably convinced that most people who leave the first presentation excited but never sign up or return for training are usually fatalities of the easily avoided rejection rocket. Here's how we prepare our unwary prospects. We suggest you memorize or paraphrase this for your own use, speaking in the singular or plural accordingly. Folks, I know some of you are excited about the numbers you've heard today. I realize that you will want to do your due diligence, as would any responsible entrepreneur. But let's face it, if I'm right, if you really can earn this kind of monthly income and semi-retire in 3 to 4 years, or at least have substantial personal and financial freedom, you'd have to be brain dead not to take me up on this deal. But I want to warn you about the 2 primary causes of failure, so you can avoid them while you're doing your investigating. Don't be afraid to use a comment like brain dead on your prospects, no matter how successful or professional they appear. We've never had anyone fail to laugh at the comment. But more importantly, you are asserting your obvious leadership, a quality they desperately need to observe in their mentor before considering joining our industry. The first cause of failure occurs when you network marketers listen to people who don't know what they're talking about. The second cause of failure results from their not listening to those of us who do know what we're talking about. Let me give you an example. It's just human nature that when we get excited about something, we want to share it with others. Whether it's a new flavor of ice cream or a business opportunity, it doesn't really matter. We want to share it, especially with the people we most care about. That's fine with ice cream or a good movie, but it's not right to share this business with anyone until you're completely trained and knowledgeable about our company. Why? Because the primary cause of failure in our profession stems from people getting excited about the tremendous earnings potential and then charging out to tell their closest friends and relatives before having the slightest idea how to do our business. It is critical that you not say anything to anyone until we have taught you a successful approach. If you begin talking to your relatives and friends about this industry, most of them are going to tell you that you've lost your mind. And even though you think you've got all the facts, even though you know the truth about the earnings potential, and even though your friends, neighbors, and relatives know nothing, they will still tell you you're an idiot. And if you have 10 or 20 people in a row question your sanity, especially people you know and love, you will give up before you begin. So don't even attempt to sell your spouse on the opportunity. Simply get him or her back here for a presentation as soon as possible. Now, I know you think you're strong enough to avoid being influenced by people whom you know are completely ignorant about our company. Everybody thinks that. And let's say that you are. Let's say that even if 20 friends and relatives reject you and tell you you're an imbecile, you do not collapse under the weight of their negative attitudes. The real problem is this. Once they've told you not to get involved, even if you later skillfully prove them wrong and answer every one of their concerns, they will not sign up. Remember, once they've ridiculed you for getting into MLM, they cannot afford to sign up themselves because that's tantamount to admitting their own foolishness. And in this era, many folks are more interested in impression management than in taking responsibility for their own lives and creating financial independence and time freedom. So, until you've been signed up, made a commitment, and been trained professionally, do not, and I mean this emphatically, do not approach your friends, relatives, or even your spouse with this business until we have taught you how to share this information with them. Some of your very best warm market recruits will never join you, no matter how successful you become, if you approach them improperly. Years of experience have taught us that the single largest cause of failure results from listening to people who don't know what they are talking about. Here's the problem. New prospects' friends and family don't know anything about your company or the business of networking, and in their ignorance they are certain it must be a scam. Until you are involved financially, they sense you are not really committed. So they will do everything in their power to save you from making a big mistake. When you say, "Hey everybody, I'm getting ready to open a new restaurant," you can count on the response. "Are you sure you want to do that? I've heard most startups go under." However, once you have already made the investment, your family and friends will do everything in their power to support you in your new venture. When you say, "Hey everybody, I've just opened a new restaurant," the response will likely be, "Oh, good for you. When can we come?" Rejection by family and friends is by far one of the biggest challenges in network marketing. But you can only change their attitudes by changing your own. After you've elevated your own self-esteem and confidence level, only then will you be able to help others elevate theirs, often altering their opinions, strengthening your family's support or interest, and opening doors to your friends and associates. We wrap up our business presentation by discussing the second cause of failure, not listening to those who do know what they're talking about. If any of you do decide to sign up and become my frontline associates, you must also be willing to duplicate exactly what I teach you. This business is totally different from traditional business, and if you're going to sign up and then try to reinvent the wheel, you're going to fail. So promise me you'll follow our system, or, frankly, I'd rather not even have you sign up. Fortunately, we are in an experienced organization, and we know what we're doing. Your first 90 days are critical, and we start the clock today as you begin your decision-making. That dialogue is the way we close our in-home recruiting presentations nearly verbatim. In fact, as prospects are preparing to drive away, we will frequently remind them one last time. Don't forget, please don't attempt to explain this business to anyone, especially your spouse, until after you've been trained. As they depart, we are already beginning to visualize them as partners. The rejection rocket can be deterred quite effectively if it is anticipated and fully understood by new networkers and prospects. Actually, if you train new frontline people properly based on the systems we will advance throughout this book, rejection will be the least of your worries. In fact, once new distributors finish with their warm market prospects and enter the cold market, rejection is one of their greatest allies. Why? Because the sooner it can be determined that a prospect is not receptive to a network marketing opportunity, the sooner the distributor can file her away for a 6-month follow-up and move on to viable prospects without wasting time. Like so many network marketers, Paul Del Vecchio and Jennifer Tallow of Berkeley, California, are still struggling to build their group. And because of their positive outlook, it is growing, slowly. But rejection has been their single biggest hurdle to overcome, especially that first year. In Paul's own words, "I'm sure there are people who breeze into MLM and skate their way to the top, but this was not my case. I'm a college dropout who spent my young adult years pursuing poetry, the classical guitar, and Eastern philosophy. I had no background in business, spent most of my time in seclusion, and drove an old '76 Chevy pickup with a snaggle-tooth bumper that I couldn't afford to have repaired. Being somewhat introverted by nature, I'd have to describe my first year in MLM like the South American diplomat who, at an elegant embassy function, tried to explain in his halting English why he and his wife had no children. My wife, she is impregnable. But when that clearly didn't evoke the response he had expected, he tried again. I mean, she is unbearable. Puzzled by their shocked expressions, he tried one more run at it with, No, what I mean to say is, she is inconceivable. I felt just as inadequate as that diplomat in my communication skills as I loaded up my truck and went down to the business district to approach strangers in suits about big money and free time, and let me tell you, they were not at all amused. And so I systematically tried everything under the sun to avoid the pain of rejection, including the art of managing a non-existent downline, but it always comes back to taking action and maintaining a positive, open attitude. Napoleon Hill, the author of the classic Think and Grow Rich, helped me understand that my state of mind must be one of absolute belief in what I am communicating to others and in my ability to deliver the message, not just a mere hope or a wish. For me, this business has been the greatest self-development course in the world. As I leave the house to prospect, I have learned that I can create one of two mindsets. I can strive to be well received by those I approach, and that is a one-step process called perseverance. Or I can try to avoid the pain of rejection, and that is a 3-step formula. Say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. Persistence coupled with absolute belief can never be defeated. And that is precisely why we know that Paul and Jenny will prosper abundantly. Call reluctance. Often the mere fear and anticipation of rejection will keep new networkers at home. Fear of getting started is one of the primary causes of failure in our industry. It is an obvious but unspoken phenomenon. New marketers will hide behind the need to study the products more or attend a few more meetings, watching how you do it over and over, even though they've already seen it 10 times. They will gladly attend training meeting after training meeting, invest time in their new business by listening to audio tapes on how to prospect and overcome objections, and generally do anything and everything possible to avoid actual prospecting. They will become involved in all manner of unproductive activities just to avoid having to, in the words of the great Nike, just do it. Then, after days, weeks, and sometimes even months of such busy work, they will decide that this business just doesn't work. After all, they haven't succeeded in building an organization. The reason is clear to everyone except them. The mere anticipation of rejection leads to call reluctance, which can and often does lead to failure. Often, a week or so before they quit, we hear the essence of their failure in the remark, "If something doesn't happen soon, we're going to have to get a job to make ends meet." In traditional business, things may just happen, but in network marketing, success comes to those who make things happen. And by the way, call reluctance is not an experience limited to non-professionals. Often it's the most sophisticated executives who carry this secret phobia, not of actually being rejected, mind you, but of the fear that they might be. Mark recruited the mayor of a major southern city, and after 6 months of virtually zero activity, he asked the mayor for his warm market list. He reluctantly handed over his top 25 names, but Mark couldn't find one person whom the mayor had actually called. In the final analysis, the mayor had to admit that he was afraid to call those friends because an election year was approaching and he didn't want to risk damaging his reputation with his constituents. He quit, having never called one prospect because of his fear of rejection. He later had the audacity to state publicly, after failing in a second network marketing company for the same reason, that MLM is a scam. He came to that conclusion without ever having called a single prospect. Not being taken seriously. Those who make it past the initial fears of getting started will often be assailed by other elements of the rejection rocket. Common among women is not being taken seriously, one of the most degrading forms of rejection. It is common for an interested male prospect who is shown the business opportunity by a professional woman networker to think something like, "I'll have to talk to my wife about this little home business." It's not a case of the woman being ineffective or the man being demeaning. It's just that most men cannot identify with having a woman recruiter who is working at home. And if she is distributing cosmetics or some other product or service with which he cannot relate, that only serves to compound the problem. No matter how strong a female leader is, in some cases the male ego cannot be assuaged by her alone. On these occasions, the potential rejection can be sidestepped by having a male upline or a male partner assist her in closing such prospects. This is not codependency, but rather part of the intrinsic nature and value of what we call double-gender closing, because ours is a team-based business. First-year associates need not close prospects alone. It's teamwork that earns leaders the right to receive multi-level compensation. In some situations, women have discovered that their gender challenges come from within rather than from without. Historically, men have had more self-confidence, while women still struggle with poor self-esteem. For years, some women have been financially dependent on their husbands, and frequently overlooked for promotions in the workplace. We realize this is changing in America, but this phenomenon is still prevalent in Eastern cultures and among older generations. Women have so very much to offer this industry, their companies, their husbands and male partners, and certainly the members of their own organizations. The problem has stemmed from an industry-wide lack of awareness about just how much women have to give and how needed feminine qualities are in today's global marketplace. The role of women is on the threshold of explosive change, along with their image. If you suspect that you are being rejected because of an attitude you project, then take some time to work on your own personal growth before attempting to build an organization. Read books, attend seminars, and listen to audio tapes to enhance your self-image. Surround yourself with positive people who constantly remind you of your worth as a person and the contributions you are capable of making. Shake off any residue of negative self-esteem, any emotional baggage that you may be carrying around, and take pride in yourself. It is important to understand that you have a greatness and an unlimited potential to elevate everyone around you. Practice exuding your inner strength with your head held high, and you will see an immediate difference in your general acceptance, your leadership success, and your income. Perhaps no woman in network marketing's 45-year span has better exemplified the transition that can occur in a woman's life once she begins to accept and project her strength than Kathy Dennison. At the age of 30, Kathy Dennison awakened to realize that she was living a nightmare. She was in an abusive marriage, and her 12-year-old daughter was suffering the pain of seeing her mother mistreated. She decided it was time to take action. She left her husband and moved to the tiny town of Basalt, Colorado, where she began cleaning houses to support herself and her child. While her personal life improved dramatically over the next few years, her finances were in shambles. But without a degree, there were few options available to her. Kathy had always believed that she had the talent and mindset to become a millionaire, but her introduction to MLM was the very first time she'd ever been exposed to a business with no limits and no major capital investment. Within 5 years, she would be relaxing on the beach in San Diego in her dream home with a husband, Mark Rogau, who shares her goals and dreams. Many people were first introduced to Kathy Dennison and her remarkable story in Richard Poe's bestseller, Wave 3. But no one can write as dramatically and accurately about Kathy as Mark Yarnell, who personally sponsored her and served as her mentor for her first years in this business. When I first met Kathy Dennison in Aspen, Colorado in 1987, she was a single parent, living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, doing her best to support her family on her meager maid's income. I'd begged our realtor to help me find a housekeeper because we were entertaining so many friends, our home rapidly became like a bed and breakfast. By the way, move to Aspen and you'll learn just how many of your friends love you. Kathy agreed to meet me as a favor to her best friend, the realtor, but had actually decided not to accept the job. At that time, she was already cleaning numerous houses and felt burned out. On the other hand, she really needed the money, and she owed the realtor a debt of gratitude for the numerous jobs she had arranged for Kathy after she left her abusive marriage. When Kathy walked into my home that first day, I was immediately impressed with two things. First, she was obviously an extrovert. Second, she had enthusiasm, a very warm smile, and although she was working as a maid, she was definitely a people person. Naturally, the old recruiting Yarnell came out, as he generally does whenever I meet a strong personality. But in Kathy's case, I suppressed my enthusiasm as rapidly as it surfaced, mainly because I wanted to devote a solid year to snow skiing, hang gliding, and writing the first edition of my book, Power Multi-Level Marketing. And truthfully, even though I teach new distributors not to play God, that is, never to qualify prospects, and always assume that everyone has the potential to succeed, I violated my own teaching. I decided that in spite of her enthusiasm, I wasn't going to sponsor my housekeeper in a town of 2,000 because the chances of her success were minimal. What a fool I was. After finally awakening from my stupor and signing her up, Kathy promptly signed up every possible prospect in Basalt and Aspen, then moved to San Diego and gradually built a business that transformed her into a millionaire. After recognizing my own stupidity in prejudging a maid, I made the decision to never again violate the one definitive precept in our industry. There's a seed of greatness in everyone. Never qualify prospects for any reason. Nearly a decade later, Kathy Dennison is one of network marketing's true heroines. As more women like Kathy join our industry, and we continue to hear more financial and emotional rags-to-riches stories, women will continue to occupy positions of importance in increasing numbers. And as Richard Poe so correctly pointed out in Wave 3, Denison's stripped-down approach served her well. She rose from a lowly maid to a millionaire in just a few years. In 1997, Kathy was named one of the top 10 women of distinction in Jerry Hoffman's International Directory of Network Marketing. We spent an afternoon skiing in Switzerland during the winter of 1997, and when we returned home, we saw the familiar red light on our answering machine signaling that we had a message. That simple 2-minute message meant as much to us as any other achievement in either of our lives. Mark flipped the on button, the machine rewound, and there, in a broken voice, was our frontline associate, Kathy Denison. Her message was a simple, "Thank you for believing in me." That afternoon, Kathy and her wonderful partner/husband, Mark Rogow, had received their millionaire's pin from the home office, signifying that they had earned over $1 million, thus inducting themselves into the company's elite millionaires club. So overwhelmed and appreciative was Kathy, so moving was her message, that we sat down and silently shed tears of joy. In that brief moment, the purpose that most forcefully drives us in network marketing was fulfilled. To this day, we can write without equivocation that you could take away everything we own, our income, our entire downline, homes and cars, and our involvement in network marketing would be justified in its entirety because of the joy we felt for Kathy and Mark on that afternoon. Seldom, if ever, has one of life's experiences so touched us at the very core of our beings as did Kathy's short message. Kathy has an inner strength, a personal belief, and an unmistakable self-worth that allowed her to rise from maid to millionaire. We believe there are thousands of women out there just like her, and every one could succeed if they could shake off their limited programming. To any woman who may feel assaulted by the rejection rocket because of her own self-imposed struggle with a negative self-image, we suggest that you select another successful woman as a mentor. Allow her to coach you every step of the way, and duplicate her steps to success. Don't take rejection personally. New associates must be taught that a no thank you is not a personal rebuff. A waitress pouring coffee in a coffee shop might be told, "No thanks," by one, "No more for now," by another. She might be told, "I have plenty, thanks," or even, "I don't like coffee." But none of these responses sends her running to the ladies' room in tears because all of her customers rejected her. And yet that is comparable to what happens to brand-new distributors. They take no, however it is said, too personally. In our industry, a decline to participate in the opportunity most often means, "The timing isn't right for me now." Occasionally it means, "I don't like direct selling." But it never means, "I don't like you." Think of prospecting in MLM as a sifting process. Like the waitress walking around with a coffee pot, we are merely searching for those who would like to have what we have to offer. Accepting no is merely part of the process of finding those who say yes. Consider this fact. Of the first 67 individuals whom Mark first approached about joining his organization, 66 said no. This slow start was mainly because Mark abandoned his warm market. He was a minister at the time and felt that it would be a conflict of interest to call on his church members. So he began in a predominantly cold market. Later, he finally recruited a few parishioners after he was himself certain of his company's long-term stability. However, his first prospects were cold calls, and all but one rejected his offers to even see a presentation. Mark felt like quitting right then, and his sponsor actually did that week. Instead, Mark called Richard Call, his upline mentor, who persuaded him to remain in the business. Had Mark's original upline sponsor not become discouraged by rejection and stayed involved, he would have, after 5 years, been earning over $1 million a year off Mark's downline alone. By the time we married and merged downlines in 1991, it had exceeded twice that amount. That's what the rejection rocket can cost a person. Personal rejection is one of the toughest human emotions anyone can experience. But as we all know, life is about balance, and where there is rejection, there must also be acceptance. Dealing with it is an ongoing task. At one point, rejection nearly drove Phil Mims of Grapevine, Texas, out of networking. As he explains, "I had a good career with 17 years in the wholesale jewelry business prior to getting involved with network marketing. That career gave me a good lifestyle, wonderful friends, and a professional ego. Making the transition into MLM meant starting over, forcing me out of my comfort zone. As I approached friends, family, and jewelry associates to be either my customers or to join me in business, I watched personalities change. Friends became cold and distrusting. My family began to snicker. Jewelry associates responded with concern for my sanity. It hurt me when they appeared to feel that I was taking advantage of them and abusing our relationships. I wanted to just say, 'Okay, never mind,' and head back into my comfort zone and secure jewelry life. I almost quit network marketing entirely. Those feelings continued for my first 18 months in MLM because my friends were important and their acceptance was crucial. Then it hit me. Some members of my downline began thanking me. They expressed their gratitude for my help and for leading them to great changes in their lives. Wow! The acknowledgement made my heart pound and my eyes tear up. It dawned on me that if I were to quit and return to my jewelry business, I would perhaps lose my new friends and business associates whom I really liked better. Networkers are such caring, sharing, giving, and excited people who, like me, are seeking success, peace, and freedom. Traditional business offers these things for a few people, whereas success is possible for so many in network marketing. To remember now that I almost quit because of my wounded pride helps me to understand what my new downline reps face. Shedding my old self and becoming a new person was indeed a painful transition. The hardest thing I ever did was to leave the comfort zone of my jewelry business. But as a result of my newfound personal freedom, personal growth, and feelings of appreciation, I found a bigger and better comfort zone. I'll always be a networker, thankful that God opens doors, provides the courage to go through them, and furnishes the light to guide my way. Not talking to enough people. If we only talk to a dozen people in the course of a week, the art of rejection by those few becomes bigger than life. If we contact a few dozen people each week, rejection is no problem, because a few will always get involved. Remember this law of balance. Increase the number of approaches and decrease the impact of rejection. Susan averaged 10 contacts a week in her business because she was working part-time and had an extremely busy schedule. Because she was working from her warm market list, she had a high ratio of positive responses. 5 promised to come to her Tuesday night business briefing to learn more about this opportunity. 2 actually showed, but neither signed. All she could think about were the 3 who didn't show, and the fact that they didn't even have the courtesy to call and cancel. 4 more weeks of that kind of rejection, and she will be out of the business. Why? Because her prospecting numbers are too small. Susan may be a hypothetical prospect in our example, but such low-number prospecting can, and indeed has, forced would-be legends right out of business, shot down by rejection. Unless, as a part-timer, you are approaching at least 5 to 10 prospects per day, you're not serious about succeeding in this business. As a serious part-timer, those numbers should increase, and as a full-timer, they can grow to 30 or more per day once entering the cold market. Meeting attendance and brochure reading doesn't count as real time. When first launching your business, if your goal is to build an organization, 80% of your time should be spent prospecting. All other activity is busy work until you have achieved a certain level of success. Do not become a professional audience participator. Get out of the bleachers and onto the field. In contrast to Susan, the 2 of us prospected huge numbers of people when first building our individual organizations. Before marrying Rene, Mark's biggest rejection rocket was launched when 6 of his 7 frontline executives bailed out and went into a vitamin deal back in 1986. He didn't just lose 6 out of 7 distributors, he lost major leaders. That is the ultimate rejection. Again, he leaned on Richard Call to keep him focused on the importance of perseverance. Consider the impact of Richard's inspiration. There were 2 major triumphs. First, the one remaining executive distributorship today earns us more than 50% of our income. Second, because Mark continued to approach large numbers of prospects, he had 7 more qualifying executives who would soon take the place of those who left. Remember, it is the sheer magnitude of the numbers of prospects we approach that keeps us from overreacting to those who do reject our approaches. Prospecting small numbers makes the rejection bigger than life. Prospecting large numbers focuses our attention on those who say yes. If you make contact with 100 people in the course of a week, 20 of whom say, "Yes, I'd be interested in looking at what you have," and 80 of whom say, "No thanks," your focus will be on the positive. Out of that 20, you will be excited about the 3 who signed up, rather than the 80 who weren't interested. On the other hand, if you approach only 10 people, 2 of whom say they are willing to take a look and then decide against it, your attention inevitably is on the entire 10 who got away. Network marketing begins as a numbers game and evolves into a people business while a legitimate organization of excited networkers is being built. The narrow focus syndrome. Many people make the mistake of inviting rejection by presenting a far too narrow focus. They often promote a single product or just one division of their company, as opposed to creating wide appeal by stressing the leveraged income and free time that result from orders of commonly used products and services. Network marketing is intrinsically designed to appeal to everyone. It is not meant to be an elitist club, nor is it effective if you promote just a single product line. And yet newcomers and old-timers alike often make this mistake. Some people failed to earn as much as they should have when their company added an exciting new nutritional division in the early 90s, and the reason is obvious. Even liberal estimates suggest that less than 30% of the population used vitamin supplements back then. Thus, 7 out of 10 people approached with only the new division just weren't interested. They couldn't relate to nutritional products and were unwilling to change their behavior. The original division upon which the company was founded consisted of personal care products. 100% of our population bathes, shampoos, shaves, moisturizes, deodorizes, and brushes their teeth with reasonable regularity. So success would have been more widespread had the distributors offered both lines of products in their presentations, thereby avoiding the needless problems created by limited focus. Even more significant, they should have been selling prospects with the American dream, big money and free time. Nearly everyone is interested in ways to achieve wealth, so focus your presentations on personal and financial freedom, making certain to call your prospects' attention to all your products, services, and divisions. This comprehensive approach is how legends ultimately build large and dynamic organizations. Turning rejection into positive motivation. John Corkill worked for a large title insurance company for 10 years, the same one his father had been employed by for over 40 years. They enjoyed working together and shared a track record of success. When corporate politics became unbearable, John, with his father's understanding and support, went to work for a competitor and tripled his income during the first year. Over the next 5 years, he created a 6-figure income. Then, due to a merger, he was laid off. His father, still with the original title insurance company, was now in charge of starting a new division and offered his son a full-time position, but the company could only pay him a pittance of his previous income. 1 week before he was due to start the job, John was introduced to network marketing. He found the right company and chose to go full-time immediately. After receiving the news, his father's comment was, "John, I guess everyone has to do something. However, if you fail at that one, you can always sell makeup since one of the largest companies is based right here in Dallas. But whatever you do, I just hope you're not going to come over to my house and try to push your products on your own dad. I know all about network marketing. Those people make $200 a month, and 9 out of 10 of them fail. John assured his father that his disapproval of the new career path he had chosen was understandable, and that he just didn't want to rely on his father for normal family support. When John did not become defensive, something clicked in his father, who seemed to realize that he was treating his son like a carpetbagger. He asked John to sit down and began inquiring about his goals. When his father was convinced that his son was fully committed to becoming the 1 out of 10 who succeeds, as he had done with the company in which they both worked, the father-son relationship was back on track. For John, the story of his father's rejection-turned-acceptance became a driving force that motivated him to stick with his new network marketing business. Not only is he well on his way, appreciative for his father's rejection and eventual acceptance, but John plans to retire at the same time as his father, so that they can enjoy the wealth together, grateful for his father having started him off on the right foot. Reaction to family rejection can often be redirected, becoming a positive force for building your business. Summary. Failure in network marketing often results from 2 problems. 1. The new distributor's argumentative approach in recruiting frontline people who have already made it obvious that the timing isn't right in their lives. 2. The mistaken belief that the goal is to overcome objections, sign up people at all cost, then drag them across the finish line through motivation and management systems. If warm or cold market prospects are approached properly, they will only reject your offer if the timing is not right, in which case you want to gently back off and reapproach them every 6 months. Rejection is your ally, not your adversary, and if handled properly, it will expedite your recruiting activities and actually set you up for a positive outcome. Don't talk about this business with friends or relatives until after you have made a commitment and have been trained. Make it a point to teach this at the close of your presentation. As you begin talking to prospects, you have the choice of creating one of 2 mindsets. 1. You can strive to be well received by those you approach by setting yourself up for a friendly callback. 2. You can try to avoid the pain of rejection by saying nothing, doing nothing, being nothing. Persistence, coupled with absolute belief, can never be defeated. When you are not getting the support that you desire from family and friends, begin first by focusing on your own attitude, and changes in their behavior will naturally follow. Once you are trained, begin immediately by picking up the phone and calling the people on your list. Don't let call reluctance and the fear of rejection stop you before you start on your adventure in network marketing. Rely on the credibility of your upline leaders. Remember, you are in business for yourself, but you are never in business by yourself. As their sponsor, prospects look to you as their mentor and leader. If you are feeling low self-esteem, read, study, listen to tapes, attend seminars, and do all that you can to continue working on your personal growth. As you grow personally, so will your networking business, and as your business grows, so will you. Building too slowly is discouraging, and often results in networkers focusing on those who rejected the opportunity, rather than on those who accepted an invitation to look at the business. The growth of your business will be in direct proportion to the numbers of people you are prospecting on a regular, daily basis. Network marketing is a numbers game after the first 90 days of warm marketing. It becomes a people business once distributors begin interacting with their sponsors to build their organizations. Rejection is not to be taken personally, but merely as an indication that the timing isn't right in people's lives. Persevere with every ounce of enthusiasm in order to give yourself the necessary excitement to do this business correctly. Prospecting small numbers makes the act of rejection bigger than life. Prospecting larger numbers focuses your attention on those who said yes. Don't make the mistake of presenting too narrow a focus, that is, by promoting a single product or just one division of your company. Create wide appeal by stressing leveraged income and time freedom based on generating orders of commonly used products and services. When retailing, 1. Offer your customers the opportunity to redirect their spending on commonly used products they are already using. 2. Educate your customers about all your new products or services, thereby undertaking to change their behavior. Rejection can be redirected to become a force for good in building your business.